Magic the Gathering's newest Universes Beyond set is here, Aetherdrift. But don't let the fact that this set is based on the popular toy line Hot Wheels fool you when it comes to new cards for Commander. These designs are zooming right past the finish line. Aetherdrift is positively overloaded with awesome new cards for Commander. There are so many designs in this set that I think are fantastic. But for the purposes of this video, I've narrowed the long list of good Commander cards down to the top 5 that I believe will be great in the format. As always, we are not talking legendary creatures to serve as Commander here. We are specifically going to focus on cards that are going to be great in the 99 of your Commander decks. But remember, don't buy Aetherdrift packs to crack specific cards for Commander. You only need one copy of a card for your deck. Booster packs are for draft. So when it comes to Commander, check out these best new cards for the format and pick them up as singles instead. We've got a lot of cool cards to cover, so start your engines, or, maybe don't. It's okay if you just want to stay home, You don't want to get in that car, but, oh God, what are you going to do for your next meal? How are you going to get food? You don't want to slog down to the grocery store? What a pain in the tuchus. And I don't want to order delivery only to wind up with some overpriced, lukewarm bag of glorified fast food. There's got to be a better way. What's that? Hello? It's HelloFresh. With summer in the rearview mirror and busy days ahead, we're all craving wholesome meals that can save us time and money. HelloFresh has something for everyone. Each box is fully customizable to fit your preferences and includes pre-proportioned ingredients, so you only pay for what you need. HelloFresh has more options to support your wellness journey than ever before. Dig into their biggest menu yet with over 50 dinner options and even more market items that suit any healthy lifestyle. HelloFresh is amazing. It's all the convenience of food delivery services and all the delicious, healthy flavor of recipes you cook with groceries without spending food delivery prices or even having to go to the grocery store to pick up your own ingredients. Don't let recipe boredom keep you from reaching your goals. Give HelloFresh a try and choose from over 30 calorie-smart and protein-smart recipes each week. Just use my code TCCJAN10 and receive 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. Click the link in this video's description, use my code, or just check out that QR code. Say goodbye to having to slog down to the grocery store, goodbye to overpriced lukewarm delivery, and hello to HelloFresh. And thank you, HelloFresh, for sponsoring this video. Let's begin our list with a card that is a little tricky to evaluate due to the fact that its mechanic is brand new to Commander. I'm talking, of course, of Muraganda Raceway, an exciting twist on the pre-con classic Temple of the False Gods. Muraganda Raceway is a colorless land with Start Your Engines, a new mechanic from Aetherdrift that says, when you play this card, if you have no speed, it starts at 1, then increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. The max speed is 4. Start Your Engines cards usually have some kind of payoff ability that only unlocks once you reach that max speed. Muraganda Raceway's payoff is turning into a soul land. It taps for 1 colorless mana to begin with, but once you reach max speed, it taps for 2 colorless mana. The earliest you can reach max speed is on turn 3, which would happen if you played a colorless haste creature like Bomat Courier on turn 1, and then consistently dealt damage on each of your next 2 turns. More realistically, the Raceway won't reach soul land status until turns 4 or 5, or possibly even later if you draw it much later. So is this really good in Commander? Why have I included it on our list? Well, there's a lot of factors that speak to its potential. First of all, if you have multiple Start Your Engines cards in your deck, the odds of turning on max speed sooner go up, and the odds that you're already at max speed by the time you play this land go up as well. This is a mechanic that gets better the more of it you put in your deck, because the downside of the mechanic is that it's incredibly slow, which admittedly could be rough in a format like Commander. The upside, however, is that many max speed abilities are exceptionally strong, as evidenced by Muraganda Raceway turning into a sole land. But the biggest reason why Muraganda Raceway is worth picking up for Commander is that the downside for including it is pretty low. It's just an untapped colorless land. There's nothing wrong with having an untapped colorless land in play, even if that land doesn't do anything else for a while. But once you do reach max speed, you'll be off to the races, with a little extra mana in your pool and gas in your tank. You know what I don't understand? Who is this max speed anyway, and why do all these cards want to reach him? Next up on our list is a powerful multi-removal spell that can cost as little as 1 mana in the right deck. It's Demonic Junker, a 7-mana 4/3 black vehicle with crew 2. When it enters play, for each player, destroy up to 1 target creature. If you destroy your own creature this way, you get to put 2 +1/+1 counters on your Junker. Multi-target removal is excellent in Commander. It's why cards like Windgrace's Judgment and Decimate are so strong. A single card that kills multiple cards is a much more powerful effect than one that kills only one of your opponent's cards. Perhaps that should go without saying, but honestly, I think these kinds of cards are still underplayed in Commander, despite their strength. Moving back to Demonic Junker, this card is simply awesome. If you're playing any kind of Artifact Commander or Artifact Matters Commander deck, well then you're likely to have a lot of artifacts in play, which means the Junker might only cost you 1 mana. It's nearly unheard of for a multi-target removal spell to cost so little mana. The fact that you get a 4/3 vehicle out of the deal when all is said and done, or a 6/5 if you kill an expendable creature of your own, well that's simply icing on the cake. Best of all, it's an Enters effect, meaning in a deck with blink effects like a Dimir or Orzhov deck, you can do this over and over again for as often as you have ways to blink it. You don't just need artifact blink either. You can crew this thing, attack, and then use something like a Restoration Angel or Ephemerate to flicker it. Even if you don't have blink effects in your deck, you can also just copy Demonic Junker with Mirrorworks or Phyrexian Metamorph. Alternatively, you can get repeated use out of the card, sacrificing it and replaying it with Graveyard Recursion, or bounce it back to your hand with Ninjutsu, like in a Yuriko Tiger's Shadow deck. Yuriko certainly wouldn't mind another 7-mana spell to reveal off of its commander Ninjutsu. Demonic Junker is an instant staple for any black artifact deck, but especially a black artifact deck that's capable of getting multiple triggers off this thing. This is a truly excellent card in Commander, and is only this far down the list because this is a set full of excellent cards for Commander. Coming up next, do you like combat steps? Well, what about extra combat steps? What about extra combat steps? I'm talking, of course, of Full Throttle, a 6-mana red sorcery that reads, after this main phase, there are 2 additional combat phases. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap each creature that attacked this turn. This card is like a supercharged Seize the Day. It's like you cast and flashed back Seize the Day in a single turn, all for 1 less mana, and then got to untap all your attacking creatures each combat instead of just 1. I don't know, it's crazy. It's crazy good. Full Throttle gives you as many combat steps in a turn as you'll usually have opponents, meaning it can turn a board that is lethal for 1 player into a board that instantly wins you the game. There are literally dozens of cards that grant you additional combats in Magic, most of them red. Of them all, Full Throttle will instantly become one of the strongest. In fact, I'd say it's the strongest that isn't currently attached to a permanent of some kind. Because it's a spell, Full Throttle is a prime target for any copy effects you may have, like a Dualcaster Mage or Galvanic iteration. It's a great card to buy back or flash back with a Pinnacle Monk or Snapcaster Mage. It's awesome with cards that trigger off attacking or hitting your opponents, like Efreet Flame Painter or Magada Brazen Outlaw. Can you imagine hitting this card off of Narset Enlightened Master? It would essentially be like casting a Time Stretch. Essentially, Full Throttle is a phenomenal finisher spell in red, one that any red deck that likes to attack, otherwise known as red decks, will want. This card is extremely powerful, and Full Throttle is going to fully throttle a lot of Commander players in the years to come. Next up on our list is an awesome card that does something we don't see a lot of in Commander. It rewards you for discarding cards. Monument to Endurance is a 3-mana colorless artifact that reads, whenever you discard a card, choose 1 that hasn't been chosen this turn. Draw a card, create a treasure token, or each opponent loses 3 life. This card is not just protection against an opposing Turgid, God of Fright. It's a busted engine in its own right. Drawing a card, making a treasure, or dealing a grand total of 9 damage to your opponents every time you discard a card is a phenomenal upside for doing something you probably wanted to do anyway. Consider Monument to Endurance in play when you cast, say, Faithless Looting. Draw 2, discard 2, and you get 2 triggers for Monument. Because no, it doesn't say discard 1 or more cards, or even do this only once per turn. You can trigger this thing up to 3 times, and it counts each card you discard individually, even if you discard them all to the same effect. So back to the Faithless Looting example, you draw 2, discard 2, then put 2 Monument triggers on the stack. Maybe you draw another card and make a treasure token, essentially making your Faithless Looting free. Let's look at another example. You channel both Saiju to destroy a problematic permanent your opponent controls. And oh, with Monument in play, you draw a card when you do it. Discard a land to a Mox Diamond, draw a card, discard a card to your Fauna Shaman? Yup, you better believe that means you're drawing a card. Draw a card is the best mode on the Monument, but don't discount the other 2 modes either. Generating a treasure each time you discard a card is also awesome, and there will be times when your opponents are genuinely sweating because of your capacity to hit them each with a lava spike whenever you discard a card. There are so many ways to incidentally discard cards in Commander, from looting effects like Faithless Looting and Cathartic Reunion, to the Kamigawa channel cards, to even something like Nezahal Primal Tide that uses discarding cards as part of an activated ability. Teferi, Master of Time, is especially awesome with this card because the Monument to Endurance resets its modes on each of your opponent's turns as well. If you really put your mind to it, you could trigger the Monument as many as 12 times in a single turn cycle, drawing 4 extra cards, making 4 treasures, and dealing 12 damage to each of your opponents. That's ridiculous value for a permanent that just sits in play. Alright, a lot of you are going to argue that our next pick should have been number 1, and quite frankly, I see where you're coming from. It's a fantastic card, and I really debated putting it in the number 1 slot. You'll just have to let me know after hearing my next 2 picks which one you thought should have been number 1, but I had to make a call, I had to make a pick, and so coming in at number 2, it's... Number 2 on the list was one of the first cards they previewed for Aetherdrift, and with good reason. Brightglass Gearhulk is one of the best cards in the set. Brightglass Gearhulk is the Selesnya edition of the new cycle of 2-color Gearhulks in Aetherdrift, 1 for each ally color pair. Oil Deep Gearhulk has potential in Standard with its well-statted life-linking body and hand disruption. And it's hard to deny that Riptide Gearhulk is a great removal spell on a game-ending threat that scales well in Commander, where it can hit multiple permanents like Demonic Junker. Pyrewood Gearhulk is also amazing in Commander, giving your team a huge buff and evasion and preventing any fog effects or one-ring protections from getting in the way of you dealing lethal. If I had to pick a worst of them, it would definitely be the Rakdos Gearhulk, which is comparatively lackluster, only reanimating a mid-sized creature for a single turn before exiling it at the end step. Technically, in 60-card Constructed, if you have 4 clones in the yard, you can one-hit kill your opponent by making 4 copies of the Gearhulk, all of which will have haste and menace. But that's too impractical to set up reliably, and if you're just reanimating one thing with the Gearhulk, it's pretty low impact. But nonetheless, this demonstrates that even the worst of them has some stuff it can still strut when it comes to 60-card formats. But when it comes to Commander, by far the best of them is Brightglass Gearhulk. Allow me to explain why. Brightglass Gearhulk costs double green and double white for a 4/4 colorless artifact creature with both First Strike and Trample. When it enters, you may search your library for up to 2 artifact, creature, and/or enchantments with mana value 1 or less. Reveal them, then put them into your hand and shuffle. Are you kidding me? Allow me to list a few of the cards Brightglass Gearhulk can tutor for. Mana like Soul Ring and Mana Volt and Chrome Mox, not to mention Mox Diamond. Card draw like Skull Clamp, Mystic Remora, Esper Sentinel, and even Curiosity. Synergy pieces like Viscera Seer, Training Grounds. Hardened Scales, and favorite of mine, the Ozolith. Even silver bullets like Haywire Might, Allosaurus Shepherd, Sylvan Safekeeper, and Soul Warden. Do you need me to keep going? Because I could actually keep going. All right, 1 mana artifact, creature, or enchantment describes what? 25% of the most powerful permanents in Commander? And Brightglass Gearhulk tutors for 2 of them? When it enters, meaning that you can also blink or bounce this to get the trigger again? All of that plus it's a 4/4 for 4 with trample and first strike? I will say it again. Are you freaking kidding me with this? Brightglass Gearhulk is absurd. It tutors for both halves of multiple powerful synergies at the same time, from Sigarda's Aid and Colossus Hammer to Mana Vault and Manifold Key. You could even use it to grab a Basilisk Collar and Walking Ballista. It could search up Serra Ascendant and Mockingbird to copy Serra Ascendant, or just grab yourself a Skull Clamp and literally any 1 toughness creature. Carrion Feeder and Gravecrawler to sack to Carrion Feeder. The possibilities are just limitless. This is the strongest card printed for Commander that they've had in a standard set for quite some time. I was this close to making it my number 1. If it has a downside, it's the card's restrictive mana cost and color identity. Only Selesnya-based decks can run this, and that's why it's at number 2. But in those decks, Brightglass Gearhulk is an absolute must include. Even if you don't have that many high impact cards to search for, even just grabbing a Soul Ring and a Skull Clamp is a really nice use for a card such as this. Heck, even if you're just getting a couple mana dorks, this card is really strong. Remember, this card is also an artifact itself, which could justify building a Bant Artifacts deck just to be able to run this card. It's that powerful. Alright, if Brightglass Colossus isn't the number 1 pick, what could I possibly have put at the top of our list for the 99 of your Commander deck? While the number 1 card on this list is as powerful as Brightglass Gearhulk, it doesn't have nearly as much of a restrictive color identity, and that's why I placed it at the top. I'm speaking, of course, of Repurposing Bay, also known as Birthing Pod for artifacts. Seriously, that's literally what this is. Repurposing Bay is 2 and a blue for an artifact with pay 2, tap Repurposing Bay, and sack another artifact to search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value to put on the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. Birthing Pod has been an excellent card in Commander for as long as it's existed, and for good reason. Repeatable tutors are a big game in a 99-card singleton format. There are a plethora of instant kill combos with Birthing Pod, but even if you just use it for fairer purposes, it's a great way to find key synergy pieces when you need them. Repurposing Bay is the same deal. It certainly could easily find you an infinite combo, but it could also just be used to find key pieces for your artifact strategy, such as Unwinding Clock, the Reality Chip, or the One Ring. Zeros can turn into a Skull Clamp or Soul Ring. Talismans and Signets can be turned into Academy Manufacturer, or even a Phyrexian Altar. Sack your One Ring with too many bird encounters to go fetch up a Gilded Lotus. And if you want to sacrifice that Gilded Lotus later, you can tutor up a Bolas's Citadel and really start going to town. You could even use a Repurposing Bay to turn a 3-mana artifact into a Brightglass Gearhulk, and go fetch up 2 more 1-mana artifacts. The key downside to Repurposing Bay is the cost of its activated ability. Where Birthing Pod only really cost 1 real mana plus 2 life's worth of Phyrexian mana, Repurposing Bay will always cost you 2 generic mana to activate. Still, in a dedicated artifact deck, 2 generic mana is not particularly hard to come by, especially since your first couple activations of Repurposing Bay can help tutor up powerful mana rocks. Also, it's Commander, so you probably have that Soul Ring, or hey, even a Muraganda Raceway that's been fully unlocked. Look at that, we circled all the way back to the beginning of the video. We ran a lap! Repurposing Bay is the kind of role-player card for a popular archetype that tends to see a lot of play in decks with a wide range of power levels, since it naturally scales to the strength of your deck, or more specifically to the strength of the cards you're tutoring for. In a high-powered deck, 1 or 2 activations of this thing could win the game outright. In a low-power deck, you're still great using it to find something like a Solemn Simulacrum, or a Thousand Moons Smithy. So whether you do like to play low, medium, or high-powered Commander decks, you're probably going to want to pick up a copy of Repurposing Bay to go in them. This card is great at whatever it is you want to do in Commander. Remember that Commander isn't the only format Aetherdrift is great for. There's also, what's popular these days, Canadian Highlander, and, a Pioneer, Modern, people still play those, Pauper, tiny leaders, and there's one at the bottom of the list, a very niche format, Standard. I'm kidding, okay? I'm kidding. I kid because I love Standard. In fact, I'm playing Standard on Monday's Shuffle Up and Play. We took Aetherdrift and we built our own Standard decks, and I even got Hall of Fame member Kyle Hill to sit down and brew up Standard decks to play against myself, Ash Lizzle, and Corey Baumeister. So be sure not to miss that episode this Monday morning. And remember, you can say goodbye to spending a fortune on crappy meals delivered lukewarm to your door or slogging down to the grocery store. Who needs it? I don't. And say hello to HelloFresh. HelloFresh has you covered for every mealtime occasion. From snacks to breakfast to lunch to dinner. It's not just dinner, it's whatever you need, when you need it, delivered right to your door and always fresh. I don't know about you, but I'm personally glad to have one less thing to worry about, and that's what HelloFresh provides, along with food that is both convenient and tasty. Just go to strms.net/HelloFresh_Tellarian Community and use my code TCCJAN10 to receive 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. Link in the video description or just scan the QR code. So say goodbye to grocery store lines and overpriced delivery and say hello to HelloFresh. Thank you for sponsoring this video.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Today, baseball legend. Is it fair to call you a legend?
Baseball lover. That lived his childhood dream. I made a couple All-Star games, won a couple World Series, played for 14 years.
And now you're going to get to play Commander. We made your Commander as you, using some of your baseball card art. Look at that.
I am gonna swing this 2 cow at you.
2 cow, 2 furious. It's about milk.
How much damage is that?
Oh, I think there's something very bad coming our way.
We're on the same team, trust me.
How do you
If she can shuffle it, you can shuffle it.
I am taking off my jacket because it's getting hot in here.
All right, let's do it.
My jeans have been crushed, I'm sweating.